all of this crap, all of this is just, this is just a no good axle anymore. What's going on, guys? We are back at it today. New day, a few weeks later. As you can see, my truck is in the background. The Nissan is actually at paint at the body shop, so that's a big step. I did get it running. I drove it there. I didn't film any of it though, just because it's like the first big drive on the highway, blah, blah, blah. I wanted to make sure everything was good with the car. But I did end up finding that this fuse here that was in my fuse panel melted. It was actually sparking as I was hitting the ignition switch to turn on the like ignition, to turn on the harness, the computer, all that stuff. So that was the actual problem. Right now we are putting the 3-inch lift in my Cummins. It's not the best, it's very rusty, it's Cummins 2nd gen, but I ended up getting a 3-inch rough country lift. It's not the best lift kit in the game, but it's, you know, fairly reasonable price. So we're gonna start installing that right now. I am working on taking out the shocks, but you know, these Northeast trucks, cars, rust is a big factor, and that's what I'm actually dealing with right now. You can see the amount of rust that's under the truck. It's unreal. All on my creeper here. It's ridiculous. We're working our way. I don't have a torch, unfortunately, but I ended up taking one of my shocks out. I couldn't take this bolt out because you could see how bad that is, so I ended up taking the angle grinder. I ended up cutting through this, cutting the bolt. I will have to buy a new bolt because the lift kit didn't come with new hardware. Like, it came with some new hardware, like some nuts and bolts, U-bolts, stuff like that, but not like the shock bolts. I have to reuse those, so obviously I cut that one. I have to go to the hardware store, match it up, find a new one. And yes, I'm starting with the rear first because I figured that would be the easier part, because the front is just, I've never installed a lift kit in my truck before, so in any truck before, so I figured the rear, you just add the block and replace the shocks. Alright, so I ended up getting both shocks out. I had to run to Home Depot to get some new hardware. Got that in, and now it is time to install the shocks. So here are the rear shocks, and big reminder, do not cut this or undo it, whatever you want to do, until you're actually about to put the shocks in, because if you do that, they're going to extend, and it's just going to be a pain in the ass to put them in with them fully extended. Couldn't even tell you how long it's been, but it's probably been like a month since that last clip that you just saw. We got the truck in the air. We are going to be doing the front today, as I did finish the rear. The rear, it was just really easy. It was just the U-bolts and the shocks. Those are all in, all tightened up. And then I did end up taking the helper spring out, which is right here. Here's a helper spring, and then here's like this little block, spacer block, that goes in between them. So what I am working on right now is the front end portion. I put new headlights on. Give you a little sneak peek. One right there, and one right here. This one doesn't really fit well, but oh well. So I ended up PB blasting basically every nut, bolt, whatever that is on this whole suspension setup. I can guarantee you the control arm hardware I'm gonna have to cut. So I ended up buying some new hardware here. It came with the cam bolt, whatever it's called, I don't know. 60 bucks on eBay for the hardware. Not the most ideal, but hey, I gotta cut them and I need them. I'm not going to the dealership. Probably gonna cost more, not happening. So I am about to take off the shocks right now. I'm not taking off the shock mount. You can see that is all messed up. But one thing that sucks about the passenger side is it doesn't have the spring cup. So when the previous owner had it, I don't know what happened, but the other side has the spring cup where the spring sits in. This side doesn't, so I have the new spring cup, whatever it's called, right here. But back to over here, it looks like this little thing where the sway bar bolts to is all bent up. And there's probably just a lot of shit that's messed up on this. The truck actually is a 1/4 inch lower on this side because there's no cup there, so I know where the shock bolts in right down there is cracked, so I'm gonna have to do some fabrication, welding and whatnot, which is gonna suck, but that's the way she goes. But we ended up getting the track bar out and the drag link, the nut is off of it, but it's not out of the pitman arm there, as you can see. I did have to take a lot of heat to this spot right here. That is where the drag link bolts up to. It's the good old Milwaukee. Let me tell you, this thing, game changer, absolute game changer. So tomorrow I'm gonna go to the store and rent the pitman arm pulling tool to pull that out. I did put the castle nut onto the threads right here, but I don't want to mushroom it at all, so I'm just gonna rent that tool at the parts store. And then after that, we have to take out the control arms. These control arms are very, very crusty. This one seems to be replaced, but I sprayed some PB Blaster on them already. These bolts are probably gonna have to be cut. That's why I bought new bolts. And after the control arms, we're gonna lower the entire axle assembly and take the shocks and springs out. I did end up getting the nuts off of the top of the shocks. I don't know if you'll be able to see, probably not, but it's just that top one, and then it should lower after that. I'll give you guys a little sneak peek of the tires I bought. Ooh, right there. Alright guys, I will see you tomorrow. Peace. Okay, now fast forward probably like 3 weeks, but here's the dilemma that we ran into. You see 2 axles there, right? Bam! No axle under the front of the truck. So what had happened was, we were taking out basically just lowering everything. We're gonna keep the axle in, but we had noticed all of this crap, all of this is just a no good axle anymore. These have been replaced, both sides. You can see, you probably won't be able to see, but on the other side is an aftermarket cup, spring cup that was welded in, and the factory spring was actually sitting on this piece. You can see the mark where the spring was sitting right here. It was sitting right here, so all of this was just messed up. This whole axle is just junk. The gearing inside of it is good, and I would say the hubs are good, but everything else just rusted. It's going to scrap. So I ended up picking up this axle here, which is out of a 2001 Dodge Ram 2500. It has decent bearings on it. I don't know, don't really care. That'll do for another time. This spring cup, or whatever you want to call it here, is just surface rust, so I'm going to take a wire wheel to it and then probably spray it. This spring cup, I had to weld in this new one. The reason for that being was because on that side there was probably like a little bit of rot right here, and I wasn't just going to take my chances on it, so I completely cut it out and I replaced it. So these brackets for the control arms are all good. They just need probably a quick coat of paint, but I don't know if I'm going to do that yet. This axle is good and ready to go in. I pressure washed it and degreased it. So we got the Rough Country springs right there, and control arms, more control arms, shocks, front shocks, where I'm going to put those in now actually. And then coming over here, getting all of the bars off was a pain in the ass. I had to cut the drag link bar and then also the drag link tie rod end, so I had to buy new ones of those, which kind of sucks because that's just more money spent out of my pocket. So here's the new bar, here's the new drag link tie rod and whatever you want to call it. I also bought a new clamp. Now these are Moog parts. I got these from O'Reilly's. And then my sway bar end links were just shot, rusted away. So I ended up buying new ones of those too. Those are Master Pro from O'Reilly's. Ain't nothing to it but to do it, boys, so let's get to it. Alright y'all, so a little time went by. All I did was put in the front control arms, the uppers and lowers, and I mounted them. I bolted them to the frame, as you can see, but it is nighttime right now. I did have to put in a new tranny line, so that took a little bit of time, but now I think we can put the axle in. Well, I am calling it a night. It's not an easy job when you're doing it by yourself. Axle is basically in, so I have it up on the jacks here. I got 2 jacks. I got the control arms basically bolted in. They're loose right now. The top control arm over on the other side does not have this bolt in yet. I'll do that tomorrow. Basically, this is where we stand. Axle is in, which is a big accomplishment. I will see you guys next time I'm out here. And then we put the shocks in, springs, and then the rest of the lift kit, whatever that is required. So I'll see you guys later.